And today on Doc Shows You How, we're making crystals out of number 2 pencils. Another episode of the $10 dollar store challenge to make some terrain. Now these are a wonderful addition to your table, whether it is you play D&D, Star Wars Legion, or Warhammer. There's lots of other kinds of games, etc., etc. If you haven't subscribed, do that now. And to the table.
Pencils. Alright, so this time we're going to be using pencils to make shiny red crystals. Now, I went with red because of the inspiration from one of the movies where they had the red crystal underneath the salt there in Force Awakens or one of those. Anyway, so pencils give us this kind of basalt looking structure here, and it's a pretty good looking piece when you're done here. And of course you do whatever colors you want. And this is super simple, so I've got a couple of figures I'm just going to show you. Like, it's going to be some good little scatter. You can hide a guy or two behind it. Anyway, so first off, you got to cut those pencils, of course. So for that, I bought a little hobby miter box that just kind of clicks on the edge of the bench, and then a X-Acto blade hobby saw. It just fits into a normal X-Acto handle. And then so I would take, and I would just use a little bit of tape and hold those together, lock that in there, and I cut both straight through and at an angle so that I could get some interesting pieces to work with, various lengths. So next we have to discuss the base. Now, I'm all about recycling, so you can certainly make that base out of cardboard and just, lay them across and glue them together. There's lots of YouTube guys that tell you how to do bases on the cheap. I managed to find some hexagon-shaped puzzle pieces at the thrift store a while back. It's a kind of matching game, a memory game. And they're reasonably hard cardboard, so I've been using those for a little while now. But of course, you can buy packs of odd-shaped wooden pieces from a hobby store. I'm also a pretty big fan of using poker chips. They're inexpensive, they're reasonably strong, and you get a crap load of them for reasonably cheap. The other thing that I like using for a lot of terrain is a CD. I know that's ugly, I didn't finish it well. So choose your base. We're going to go ahead and choose this one. Now this one I've already prepped by scratching up a bunch with an X-Acto blade. If you feel like it, you can go ahead and sand that down a little bit more. So we just go ahead and start gluing those pencil pieces, got a nice array of them, to your base. Now I like starting with a reasonably tall couple of pieces here. So these are, what do we got here? 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And then as you're gluing these down, remember, you want to hide any of this little writing in case it's embedded. So we're just going to go ahead and choose an edge. Leave yourself a little bit for some ground cover, some flocking or sand or whatever you're going to do. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, and just kind of get that glued in place. So for this project, I'm just using a simple super glue. If you had more patience, I suppose you could probably do this with a wood glue. I just don't quite have the patience to wait for that to dry. It might end up being stronger. If you decide to try it that way, please do let me know. I'd be curious. So we're just going to kind of aim that to the inside again where that little word is. And there's a little bit more glue there, so we're just going to flat side to flat side. And then just start building it out. So then after you get a few standing straight up, you take a couple of these with the angle cuts and just, come in and figure out what you like as far as how to get some more interesting, more dynamic angles. Let's see, this broke weird. We're just going to hide that in between, put it right up close on another one, and you just kind of start building out your crystal structure. Put as many or as little as you like as you glue through it. Now I've got this one that's a little bit further along already, just to kind of move the video along. So you've got a nice little chunk here, And then that's, of course, going to give you some good cover for a guy, right? Like he can totally hide behind it. He can kind of get partial coverage around it, all that stuff. Now, one thing that I want to take a moment and point out is when you have got all of your pencil pieces glued down, this becomes something you want to hide. As if you are a regular viewer, you're going to be familiar with my phrase, hide your sins. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to use a little bit of glue all PVA style Elmer's glue here, and we're just going to put a single drop on the top of each of these things. Now that becomes important, and I have an example why that's important later, but essentially what this is this is going to hide that pencil end with just a little bit of a dollop of glue. You just cover all of them like so. And then you just kind of get that coverage on there. You may want to do this once or twice, just kind of to help hide that it's a regular pencil a little bit. And then before painting, you can even kind of see that you've got a nice smooth, it's clear of course, but you can see that you've got a smoother cover. Now, what I did was I took and did kind of a zenithal paint job with reds. I had a nice dark crimson red. I did not spray on it, I sprayed near it, around the sides, and then a nice hard red from the top. Now, take a look here. You see how you see all the little pencil edge things here? This one, just for an example, I did not put those dots of glue on. Now, this I will of course go back in and fix afterwards so I have a nice piece. But once they're on there, see you've got a little bit less of a glaring, hey, I'm a pencil. Basing is pretty straightforward. I just used some sand, a couple little pieces of corkboard. Now, I chose the red because of the crystals in the one Star Wars movie where they had the whole little holdout with Solo Jr. and Uncle Luke. I took some liberties, of course, here because the crystals are not overt crystals like this, and pencils only make kind of a basalt thing, but whatever. We're talking about sci-fi. It's in space. Things can be weird. So in an earlier effort to kind of work on this idea, I did make this big piece you saw a minute ago here when I showed off the base. Now this one I did a little bit differently. It was before I kind of decided to do the angular ones. And then I used a little bit of white sand and even a little bit of baking soda with Elmer's glue to kind of throw in that salty looking cover like in the one Star Wars movie I mentioned here. Now you're going to see all of these different levels here that I used my hole punch for. I've discussed hole punches in my previous videos. I have different levels of there, and then I even cut a couple layers out of foam core board. This one is a little bit more interesting of like a stronghold. You've got these wonderful little like cutouts where people can stand a little higher, and so it's a pretty fun one here. So so for $1 or $2 worth of buying pencils at the thrift store or at the dollar store, you get yourself a pretty good collection of pencil crystals to be able to make your table more interesting, whether it's a desert environment in a sci-fi or an Underdark or fairyland or something like that. These could certainly be used to a lot of effect. And then so I'm going to go ahead and knock up a couple more of these and do them different color schemes just to kind of give you an idea what else you might be able to do. So here's the sample red pieces. The flocking is pretty straightforward, just some sand, little bits of corkboard. So I did that ended up being black with the color shift spray paint. I just have some on hand for the project. I figured it was worth playing around with. And then my sister suggested doing some purple ones and trying to get some sort of sheen on it. That's how those turned out. Like the camera is not really doing justice to the sheen on these. It just kind of looks glossy. Unlike this one where you kind of get a good look on that sheen. And then I did some green, kind of doing the Emerald City, kind of inspired by Wizard of Oz a little bit. Pretty happy overall with how this project has managed to go. And you can see that with a box or two of pencils and an afternoon, you can get a pretty good number of crystal pieces for your table.
Well, thanks for hanging out to the end. If you got a suggestion, add it below. If you hasn't subscribed, do that. Come back soon to Doc Shows You How. You have an amazing day.